Good afternoon, and welcome to the Kennedy Center's Science and Music Lab. My name is Yvonne Caruthers. I'm a cellist in the National Symphony Orchestra. Today, here in the lab, we're going to do some experiments for you about sound and about music. You can see we've got quite a bit of equipment here, and as you know, whenever you're in the lab, you have to set up your equipment to make sure that the experiments will work. So that's how I'd like to start today. And while I'm working, I want to play a song for you, and I want you to listen very carefully to it. I know a lot of times when, especially you young people, when you're listening to a song, you like to clap along and sing with it, but I want you to listen to it just as quietly as you're listening right now, because the words in the song will tell you a lot about the concepts that we're going to be talking about here in the lab today. So listen to the song, and I'll prepare the equipment.
Ocean wave, sound wave, light wave, shock wave, radio wave, microwave, heat wave, brain wave. A wave is a wiggle in space and time. Like an ocean wave, it moves up and down, repeating in cycles of up and down. The up is called the crest, and the trough is the down. The wavelength is the distance from crest to crest or trough to trough. Into a puddle, raindrops drop, and water waves roll off. A wave carries energy as it goes. Sound waves make air molecules rock and roll. To and fro and to and fro, from speaker to ear, that's how they go. Sound waves make air molecules rock and roll. The frequency is the rate that sound waves make air molecules shake. The higher the freak, the higher the pitch, and the faster the molecules twitch. The bigger the bell, the longer the wavelength, and the slower the air shakes. The smaller the bell, the shorter the wavelength, and the faster the air shakes. Tune into my frequency and do the freaky wave with me. Sound waves make me rock and roll, up and down and to and fro. Microwaves cook your casserole, making water molecules rock and roll. Wave it up, heat it up, eat it up. Physics, yum yum.
That's a great song, isn't it? And it's a It's a wonderful introduction to the things that we're going to be talking about today. Now, just now when I was measuring the strings of these 3 different instruments, I was using millimeters to measure. But what I want to do now is take a very different kind of measurement using a metronome, because I want to see how fast I can play this cello. Now, if I turn on the metronome, there are little numbers around it, and the first number I'm going to stop on, it says 60. So the metronome is beating 60 times a minute, which is once a second. And the composer wants me to play 4 notes every time the metronome ticks. So if it's ticking once a second, and I'm playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 4 notes a second. That's actually not very fast. So I'm going to turn up the metronome so that it says 120. So now it's ticking twice every second. And if I play 4 notes per beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 8 notes a second. So let me try that, see if I can do that. Well, I think I could probably go faster. Let's take a look at what it would be, what the data table would look like if we put those metronome markings on the left side and the rate that it's beating in the middle and the number of notes per second that I'm playing on the right side. Let's see if I can go even faster. I'm going to turn it up. Let's try this. I know if I wanted to keep moving the metronome faster, I'd have to practice a lot, and I would probably keep track of it every day and keep trying to improve my time, which is exactly what athletes do, isn't it? And if you want to be the best athlete, you get yourself a coach, and you work with a stopwatch, and you set goals for yourself, and every day you try to improve your performance. And you know from watching the Olympics that the best athletes in the world are absolutely amazing, and they've gone through years and years of training their muscles, their reflexes, their brains, how to do the best that they can. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to bring one of these Olympian athletes to the stage here at the Kennedy Center today to tell us how he goes about breaking a world record. Please welcome Steve Dumaine. Steve, I mean, I know you play tuba in the National Symphony. I didn't know that you were an Olympic athlete as well. That's incredible. Are you one of the speed skaters?
No, I'm not one of the speed skaters. None of them actually could make it. Mad case of bunions.
You got some great shoes on. Were you going to skate with your tuba?
No, I'm not going to skate with my tuba. That could end in tears. I came to play my tuba. What are you doing? I came to play my song for these fine students out in the audience, and you keep turning on this metronome. They don't want to hear a metronome, they want to hear me.
But Steve, we could do this awesome experiment. Before you came here, I was showing them that I could play about 10 notes a second. And if we could see how fast you could play, we could compare your speed with my speed, and it'd be this awesome science experiment.
I don't know, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I don't want to be some sort of human guinea pig for your science experiments. But you know, I can play pretty fast. How fast does your metronome go? No problem.
That's not fast. That's not fast. That, if I do the calculations, that comes out to something like 3 notes a second. When I was showing him how fast I could play, I was playing 4 notes every time the metronome ticks. Here, let me turn it down and show you what I'm talking about. So, can you do that on the tuba?
So you want me to squeeze 4 notes into every click on the metronome?
Yeah, squeeze. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I can try.
Hey, Natasha. So glad to see you.
Oh, is that a fur coat made of fur
And if your head. In Russia, where I'm from, it gets so cold that if you throw a cup of water in the air, it freezes before it hits the ground. And they don't close schools.
Well, Natasha, the reason I'm so happy you're here is that, isn't it true that violinists can play really, really fast?
Of course they can.
Could you do that for us?
Yes, but I'm not warmed up yet.
Well, let's just start slow. Let's use the same speed that Steve was doing. This is about 8 notes a second, okay? Maybe you can do this. And you're going to play 4 notes every time it clicks, okay? Ya ta 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 ta. You're ahead of
Well,
it.
not that slow. I can do faster.
Oh, okay. Well, let's try this.
I can do faster.
Faster, okay. All right, this is it. This could be a world record. Ooh, man.
But this is not music. This is just a science experiment. Who cares how fast can you play? Let's play real music.
Well, yeah, let's play some real music. But while she's getting her coat off, let's look at that data table. And I think it proves exactly what you all suspected. Natasha plays the fastest. What kind of music do you want to play, Natasha? Do you have a specific piece in mind?
Yes, I would like to play a piece by Pablo Sarasate, Zigeuner Weisen. It's a great fun piece. It's going very fast. And Sarasate uses a lot of fun technique, violin technique in this piece. He uses double stops. He uses pizzicato. It's when I pluck with my right hand. And I pluck with my left hand. So listen for that.
How fast do you want to play?
Fast.
Oh. Huh. Well, Steve.
Very impressive, Natasha. That sounds great. So you remember at the beginning of the show, you heard that song about waves, microwaves, brain waves, ocean waves, etc. In the 17th century, scientists discovered how to measure waves, and what they found was really, really neat. Each pitch in music has a different sound wave and a measurement that corresponds to that sound wave. The most famous of which is A, 440, the note played by this little tuning fork. So the number 440 means that's how many times per second that note is vibrating. We call that the frequency of the pitch. How many notes a second it vibrates. When scientists compared frequencies of different pitches, they discovered that the pitch which is 1 octave above A440 has a frequency of 880. And the note which is 1 octave below A440 has a frequency of 220. These are all 2-to-1 ratios. 880 is 2 times 440, and 440 is 2 times 220. Pythagoras figured out frequency ratios centuries ago, and modern scientists confirm them with precise measurements. Later, scientists were able to discover and measure other kinds of waves too, like light waves.
Well, light waves are so interesting. And it turns out that visible light, which is what we all see every day around us, is a very tiny part of what's known as the electromagnetic spectrum. Can you say electromagnetic spectrum?
Electromagnetic.
I like trying to say it really fast. Down there at the bottom, you see radio waves, which have these huge wavelengths, and up at the very top, you see gamma rays, very, very short. But let's enlarge those colored bars on the right side of the graph and take a good look at them. Up at the very top, you see violet light. And you remember from the song, it said, wavelength is the distance from crest to crest, that's the upper part of the wave, or trough to trough, that's the bottom. And if you measure that, the crest to crest or the trough to trough for violet light, you find out it's only 400 nanometers. It's like, you squeeze your fingers together, it's so close. And way down at the bottom of the chart, you see dark red light, and the wavelength for dark red light is 700 nanometers. Now, if these colors were sounds, you can see that 400 to 700 is not a 2-to-1 ratio, so they would be less than an octave if we could hear them. Not quite an octave.
The piano keyboard covers more than 7 octaves. We don't have a piano here, but between Steve's lowest note and my highest note, let's count how many octaves can we play. Steve, what is the lowest A you can play on tuba? So it comes to 7 octaves too, just like a piano.
So if colors of light had sounds, everything that we see would be less than an octave, but we can hear 7 octaves, even a little bit more than that, quite easily. So it turns out we can hear better than we can see. Now, here are some pictures from a medical textbook showing microscopic hairs deep inside of your ear. You can't see these from the outside. Somebody had to take these pictures using a microscope. These are called cilia, and they have a really important job. They take those sound waves that are coming into your ear and they turn them into electrical impulses that the neurons in your brain, those nerve cells, they can understand those as sounds. Now these are really healthy cilia in the picture. There's probably a young person who hasn't damaged their hearing in any way. These are not so healthy. And this is the bad news about cilia. Once you damage them, or if they break off, they don't grow back. It's not like the hair on your head. So you have to protect your hearing. You don't want to be around a jackhammer. You don't want to listen to music with your headphones turned up too loud. And if you get seriously sick, you've got to do something about it. You've got to protect your hearing. Look at this. These cilia are gone. So that person has lost a lot of their hearing. So when you get back home or get back to school, you might want to go online and see if you can participate in Noise Awareness Day, which is later on in April this year.
How many of you all like word problems? I happen to love word problems. Let's take a look at this one. Take it home and see if you can come up with an answer.
Oh, Steve, you can probably do that one in your head, right?
If A440 is my starting point, determine the frequency of... I would definitely need a pencil and paper to figure that out.
Maybe a calculator?
Maybe a few hours, too. Word problems can help us apply math and science things we learn in school to real-life situations. But in music, we don't call them word problems. We call them etudes. An etude is a French word that means to study.
Usually, violinists play just on one string at a time. And if I want to play more than one note together, I need a company. But some composers ask for double stops, which means I have to play two notes on two strings at the same time. You heard in Sarasate, I played few double stops. So when I play a series of double stops, the finger on one string moves a different distance than the finger on the other string. And at first, it's very difficult to keep track which finger how far to go. It's very confusing. And also, it's very strenuous to press two strings at once. So I need to develop some muscles before I try to play a lot of double stops. So Kreutzer, famous violin teacher, wrote several etudes for his students to make sure they practice their double stops. In your cue sheet, I think you have a Kreutzer etude number 34. Here it is. It goes like that for 3 pages. It's very good etude. Every violinist should practice that. But today I thought it would be more fun to listen next one. Number 35.
Thank you, Natasha. Now, those of you who are violin students, don't get discouraged if you don't sound that way when you're practicing your double stops, because Natasha has been playing that for years, and it's very inspiring to hear you play it. Well, we've talked a little bit about how vibrations make sound waves, but let's take a look now at the actual materials that our instruments are made of and how those materials actually help the sound.
The fingerboard is made from ebony, a dense black wood from Africa. The bridge and back and sides of the violin are made of maple, like maple trees that grow around this area. The sound post and the top of the violin are made from spruce, which also grows here. If you look inside the violin, you can see the sound post wedged between the back and the top of the violin. Vibrations go from the string through the bridge to the sound post. And then sound comes out of the F-holes. They are called F-holes because they look like a fancy letter F, the way it might look in an old manuscript. The body of the instrument is a resonating chamber. If you ever shouted in a tunnel or a cave, then you know about resonance and echoes.
Well, Natasha, this instrument doesn't really fit your description at all.
Yeah.
It has a fingerboard, but it's not made out of ebony. And it has a bridge. And if I turn it around, you'll see that there is no sound post wedged inside, and it doesn't have a body. It has no resonating chamber. So how do you think it's going to sound? Well, let's find out. Play me a note on your violin, please. You can barely hear it, right? Because without a sound post and without a resonating chamber, it doesn't make much sound. But it's called a practice cello, and it was built this way so that you could play it in your hotel room without bothering the people next door. Now, Natasha, how's your violin made? Did they make it in a factory? They just crank it out in a press or a mold?
Of course not. Professional violins made by hand.
By hand?
Violin makers, they spend a lot of time carving out of wood very carefully.
Carving, you mean like with a knife on a block of wood?
Yes, it's a great art to make a violin.
Well, I have another instrument here. It's also made by hand, but in a very different kind of process. This instrument is made actually in a mold. And it's made out of a special material called carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is a fantastic material. It's indestructible, just about. They take layers of carbon fiber and they lay them in the mold, as you see in the picture, and then they cover them with a special glue called epoxy, and the whole thing is actually baked in a very hot oven, and it sounds really great. A lot like a wood cello. And the nice thing about carbon fiber instruments, they don't crack, they don't break. You can take them out in the rain and nothing horrible happens to them. And I know you can't say that about your violin, can you? So that's one of the scientific advances for instruments.
To make our strings vibrate, we pluck the strings with our fingers or use the bow. The bow is made from horsehair and wood called pernambuco. It's an endangered species in Brazil. Some old bows have a piece of ivory which comes from an elephant tusk at the tip of the bow. But today bow makers use a piece of plastic or bone or mammoth tusk instead.
Now, I find that really strange because the mammoths are extinct, so now you get to use their tusks. Do you have mammoth tusk on your bow?
I have mammoth tusk.
You do too. So your little piece of mammoth tusk and my little piece of mammoth tusk, these might be 20,000 years old.
Could be.
Could be.
Rosin comes from the sap of trees, and we put it on horsehair to make it sticky, so it helps the strings to vibrate.
I have some rosin right here. I'm going to put just a little bit out here at the tip of my bow, because my etude that I'm going to demonstrate for you asks for the player to play almost all of it out at the very tip of the bow, which is the weakest part of the bow. This is the strongest part down here under your hand, but when you go all the way out here to the tip, you can see this is going to be the weakest part of the bow. So if your teacher told you to practice this, you'd probably do it for about 5 seconds and then quit because your arm would get tired. So this Italian cellist named Alfredo Piatti wrote this caprice, which is an etude. And the whole thing is supposed to be played out at the tip of the bow. I'm not going to be playing double stops the way Natasha did. I'm going to be alternating strings with my bow. And you'll hear a melody on one string and a harmony on the other string.
Nice job, Yvonne. That sounds great.
Thank you, Steve.
So these guys were talking about the materials that their instruments are made out of. Obviously, my tuba is not made out of wood. It is made out of brass. And this brass is coated with a very, very thin layer of silver. When I play my tuba, I'm actually vibrating my lips into the mouthpiece of the tuba. This is the mouthpiece, as you can see on the screen in a second, that different instruments have different sized mouthpieces. Tuba being the largest one. This is what I do into the mouthpiece when I play it. Go like this, everybody. Put the hand in front of your face. This is a no spray zone, and you could try that. So my tuba is a very large resonating chamber for this vibration that I'm making with my lips. The cello and the violin, the body of those instruments, are resonating chambers for the vibrating strings. Now, I don't need this big expensive tuba to make nice, beautiful music with my lips. I can use this you can hold that if you want, this very inexpensive budget trumpet from Home Depot using this garden hose. I love doing that. Thank you. So when I play my tuba, I have these buttons on the front. They're called valves. When I play the tuba and don't actuate any of these valves, the air goes straight in here, and it goes straight out the bell of the tuba. This big part here is called the bell. It goes straight out. It doesn't pass go. It doesn't collect $200. But when I do press a valve, it makes the air take a little detour here. When I press the valve, it goes through one of these loops. You can see on this diagram, on the right-hand side, that red arrow makes a little loop-de-doop. That represents one of these little detours the air has to take, okay, before it exits the bell. The diagram on the left represents the air when I do not press a valve. It goes straight out. So every vibrating column of air, like the air in my tuba, every vibrating string, like the strings on the cello or the violin, have individual vibrating parts too. And those are called harmonics, or overtones. And you can hear them. It's the series of notes that I can play on this garden hose. I could also do that same thing on my tuba. Notice I'm not going to use any valves for this. Look, Ma, no hands.
And I could do the same thing on a vibrating string, because as Steve said, not just the whole string vibrates, but parts of the string vibrate. And if I touch my finger lightly at those specific spots, I can get the harmonics.
I can do that too.
You can also hear harmonics if I sing in a very special way. What I'm about to do here, I'm going to sing the fundamental pitch with my voice, but I will change the harmonics or the overtones as I change the shape of my mouth. Basically, what I'm going to do is say the word ear very slowly forward and backward. So listen for this little high-pitched, almost a whistly kind of sound go up and down as I say ear forward and backwards.
I hear him.
Could you hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's actually the first time I've ever done that in public. Before, Natasha demonstrated double stops. That's when she played more than one note at a time on her violin. It is a little known fact that you can do this on a tuba also. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to play one note by vibrating my lips, and I'm also going to sing another note using my voice. So two notes at the same time on the tuba.
That's incredible.
I think that's the first time I've ever done that in public, too. Most people think of the tuba as this poor, lonely instrument that sits in the back of the band going, pa, boring, boring. That's not the case. The tuba can play songs too. And every one of these etudes that we've played for you demonstrates a different technique on the instrument. Natasha's demonstrated the double stop. Yvonne's demonstrated playing way out at the tip of the bow. My etude is going to demonstrate the lyrical singing quality of the tuba. That the tuba can actually play songs too, like a singer would sing a song.
We're hoping that having seen this performance, you'll have lots of questions when you go back to your classrooms and when you go home. And if you'd like to, you can email us your questions and we'll try to answer them. All you have to do is go to my website, YvonneCaruthers.com. Just type in my name with no punctuation, and we'll be happy to try to answer your questions. Well, the last thing that we want to talk about today is something that's very fundamental to what all of us do every day. And you've all been doing it so long you don't even think about it, and you can't remember when you learned how to breathe, because you had to do that the very first thing when you were born. And if you weren't breathing, you wouldn't be sitting here, would you? And I know that all of you have tried this before. How long can you hold your breath? And after a few seconds, it hurts. Your throat hurts, your eyes hurt, your chest hurts, everything hurts, and you can't help it. You gasp for air. You have to take another breath. Well, scientists have had questions about why some mammals don't need to take another breath, particularly animals that live in the ocean, mammals like whales, dolphins, seals, even birds like penguins who spend a lot of time in the water. Because the scientists noticed, a whale will come up to the surface and they take a big old gulp of air and then they dive down and they don't come back up for 45 minutes maybe. And if you follow them, you find out that they go thousands and thousands of feet down under the water where the water pressure is really heavy. And scientists ask themselves, how is that possible? And they discovered that these animals have a different mechanism for breathing, and the scientists, of course, had to give it a fancy name called the mammalian diving reflex. And they discovered that, let's say this whale comes up to the surface, gets their big gulp of air, goes down 5,000 feet under the ocean. The pressure from the water actually shrinks their lungs. Their lungs get a lot smaller. And Their heartbeat slows way down. So the animal's actually not using all that much oxygen, which is why that one big breath of air lasts so long. Well, of course, people took up the challenge. And this woman can actually jump into a swimming pool, sit on the bottom of the pool for 8 minutes without taking a breath. And we had the men's record holder up at the beginning of the show. Look at this, 11 and a half minutes. Now, to me, the magical part about this special kind of breathing is that when they step out of the swimming pool and take another big breath of air, they don't have brain damage. They're not in a coma. There's not something wrong with them because it's a completely different way of breathing. And Steve, you sort of breathe for a living, right? So I have to ask you, when you're playing your tuba, are you holding your breath?
No, I'm not holding my breath at all. I'm actually controlling it. Here, let me demonstrate just a little bit of that etude I just played.
Okay.
This is how it sounds when I control my breath. And this is what it sounds like when I don't control my breath and have to break it up, taking big gulps of air.
Which is probably how I would sound if I tried to play the tuba. Hey, wait a sec. Could we try another science experiment? I know that Natasha has amazing bow control, and she can hold a bow really long, one note. She just holds it for like seconds and seconds. And you can probably control your breathing, right? So if I turn the metronome on and it's clicking once a second, we could measure how many seconds you make your bow last, and you measure how many seconds you can make your breath last. Can we try that? You guys are going to help me count, okay? You ready?
Sure.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go. I think she beat you.
That's you.
I think so.
Not so fast. I've got a little trick up my sleeve. It's called circular breathing.
Wait. You're going to breathe through your sleeve? What? You said you had a trick up your sleeve. What?
No, my sleeve has nothing to do with it.
Oh.
It's a trick. I'm going to breathe in and out both at the same time. In through my nose, out through my mouth simultaneously while I play my tuba. Boys and girls, you can hear it when I do this because you're going to hear a little sniff through my nose when I'm playing the note. And that's when I'm doing circular breathing. Theoretically, I could play a note forever by doing this.
Steve, come back. That's incredible. We're going to let Steve go back to playing, to breathing normally. And we'd like to thank all of you for being here with us today. You've been a fantastic audience. And you're our TV audience, too. So we want to thank you especially for that. Natasha, you speak Russian, right?
Yes, I do.
So can you tell us how to pronounce the name of Steve's piece? Because it's not an American name, is it?
No, we call it Tsiganechka, which means little gypsy girl. And Steve is going to be a star in this song.
This song was originally played on the guitar, but I'm going to play it on my tuba. Thanks a lot for coming, boys and girls. It's been a lot of fun to play for all of you.
Meet the artists after the show. You and your students can ask questions of artists after each broadcast by emailing us at distancelearning@kennedy-center.org. Don't forget to visit us online. There you'll find dozens of archived programs from previous seasons, additional resources including music and video clips, and study guides. Experience some of the most celebrated and talented artists, such as members of the National Symphony Orchestra, the Suzanne Farrell Ballet, the Billy Taylor Trio, Sweet Honey in the Rock, cast members from Ragtime, and many more. The Kennedy Center Performing Arts Series, bringing the arts to your classroom.